Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome back to Podcast with Ammi. So today we have with us Ali Nomani, who wears a lot of hats. Like he's a Harvard graduate, he's an entrepreneur in the education space, he's part of a very prestigious college counseling firm, he's also a really involved father. So we'll talk about a lot of the current topics that are affecting higher education today in Pakistan and the world. And then we'll also come down to stories about how he was successful at his school and university and what lessons we can drive from his life to help shape our own children's success. Hi, Ali.
Hi Aisha, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. So Ali, I want to start with I think the topic जो like हर WhatsApp group पे जिनके भी बच्चे O levels में है ना उनके WhatsApp groups पे आजकल एक ही topic हो रहा है. Should children from Pakistan, and I'm talking about just Pakistani citizens, not dual nationals, should children, given the halat and given Trump statements and given visa issues and given the overall anti-Muslim environment in the US, should we even be preparing our children to apply to American universities if they're in O and A levels, which means they will be applying in the next 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, I think I appreciate the nature of the question and the fact that a lot of parents are thinking about it, are worried about it. We are also watching the situation very closely on a daily basis, and I think it remains the first thing to know about it is that it remains an evolving situation. So if you notice how the Trump administration over the last 6 months that they've last 5 or so months. The way that they have, so we can take an example from the tariffs. They take a position which is a very strong position in favor of their own agenda, and as the stakeholders react to that situation, some adjustments are made. So I think Trump has taken a very strong stance against Harvard University and is using Harvard pretty explicitly to make an example for the academia, American academy in general, to sort of fall in line. And there have been some bright spots in resistance against that because it feels like a real, so I was there at Harvard actually during the start of two movements. One was the Black Lives Matter movement and we were very an active part of that actually as a brown student there myself, as a principal of a high school with primarily black students. So I have felt that energy firsthand, and then the Me Too movement sort of promoting more egalitarianism as it relates to women, and both those movements started there at the same time. So, and their impact resonates and is felt across the world. So I think this pro-Palestine or anti-genocide movement that was started in also at Harvard and Columbia. It is having a reaction, and I can't imagine that this is the kind of thing that can be permanently censored. So I don't believe in the permanence of these adjustments. The American Academy, its finances, and its existence pretty much is predicated on a lot of international students coming. In fact, very frankly, the American economy is. So this is the first pull of brain drain from donating countries to the recipient country, which is the US. The US population is on a decline. The US participation in higher education of US citizens is on a decline. The expenses of a US college education are on the up and up. So I don't think that this is a lasting phenomena, but certainly at Dream 3, what we are advising parents to do for this particular year, or what we've started talking to our students about, is creating backup options, particularly those who are very minded to make sure that they start college this year and don't have a 6 month or a 1 year interruption as things settle. So that's what I would recommend to families, that just for the visa issue. Now, insofar as the anti-Muslim sentiment, that's the second thing you mentioned. I think I actually see this as a bright spot. The amount of people that came out across the US against the government support of the Israeli genocide is very telling. It's telling of a sentiment that seems to be shifting in favor of Muslims as far as I'm concerned. So, for the last 20 years, yes, we've had a very anti Muslim sentiment from 9/11 all the way up to the start of about COVID. And then now there is a reckoning in the American public, I think, that America may not have played the best role in the Middle East and its politics. So, for example, if you think of Afghanistan, 20 years presence there for the second time and left it in a complete disaster again for a second time. Iraq was a functioning country with no weapons of mass destruction, left in complete disaster, and that's this unchecked support of Israel is very much visible to the American public as well. And I think from that standpoint, I think it may be a better time to be a Muslim in America. The government notwithstanding, but the public interest, and that sort of is very much amplified in the American academy. So I think that Muslim students can expect more protections from universities, even as the government sort of withdraws some of the support that they may have provided to Muslim students in the past.
Yeah. So you were mentioning backups. अब जब backups की बारी आती है, for people who want like the big name American universities, the only other option seems to be Qatar and Dubai, because you still have the names. You have NYU, Abu Dhabi, or Dubai, I think, and then you
Carnegie
have
Mellon,
Carnegie Mellon in
Texas
Qatar.
A&M.
Yeah, and I think Georgetown is also
Yep.
in Qatar. Then they have Cornell has like a specific campus. Then it's interesting. So I remember talking to Michael Thompson about this very topic, and I was talking to him at a school called Repton, which has its main campuses in the UK and then satellite campuses in Dubai. And at that time, I was thinking about moving my son there. And he gave me like a blanket statement. He's like, these satellite campuses are not worth their weight. He was like, I'm just not a fan of them. Do you think that holds true for satellite universities, or do you feel that given just the situation right now, also the satellite campuses are providing much better financial aids? So I personally know somebody who got into University of Chicago, got a 20-30% from there, could not afford it, but is getting 100% scholarship from, I think, maybe Carnegie Mellon or Georgetown. So what is your opinion? Should everybody be applying to these as a backup, or what should we be mindful of?
Yeah, I think I try to in the world of education, because we're talking about individual children. I try to stay away from words like everybody, always, or never. And so I think this is certainly an option that works for a lot of people. The academic experience will not be subpar. So first thing, I think
It won't be. It will
yeah,
be
it will be a
equivalent.
it will be a great academic experience. These universities are very competitive. They're incredibly resourceful, and the Middle East has emerged. They've had strong PR over the last decade or so, particularly as it relates to their education businesses. So I think the academic experience will not be subpar compared to their. There might be some sort of limitations in terms of resources, but the academic quality and the rigor will be just as good, if not higher in some cases. So, for example, NYU in the Middle East is perhaps more competitive than NYU in New York to get
Really?
admission. Yes,
Is it?
so they're not easy universities to get into
Why
either.
is that so? Why
Because
is that really
and I think
nice?
one of the reasons why is because particularly in the eastern hemisphere, there are two reasons. One, some Far Eastern or Chinese, or even to some extent South Asian families feel some hostility from the US and want to keep their children more in cultures that are not US centric. And then secondly, it's a distance. People want their kids close by. They want them to be one flight away rather than a transatlantic flight and then a transcontinental flight. So I think those two factors, and then the Middle East is the safety is. For parents who safety is a concern, I think it's a safer option in the US. Most importantly, I think some parents who think very strategically about this are seeing the American economy sort of over the long term taper down versus a lot of robustness, initiative, innovation, investment going into Middle Eastern economies as they move away from, limiting their carbon footprint and investing in diversifying their economy through sovereign funds, through developing new cities, through starting new businesses, through these AI ventures, the 100 billion, I think, dollar investment that the Saudi sovereign fund has made in AI this year. So, those are the types of, and even after their failure of the Neom city, they're not, they're young, hungry, aggressive economies. You see, so ابھی انہوں نے جو وہاں بھی نیوم میں بھی جو نقصان اٹھایا ہے ان کو اس کی پریشانی نہیں, انہوں نے وہ اپنی شفٹ کر دی ہے انویسٹمنٹ پرائیورٹیز ٹورڈز artificial intelligence development. Similarly, Kuwait, I think, has made a really big technological investment very quietly. Nobody knows. And so I think parents who are paying attention are looking at these as the emerging economic centers of the world over the next decade, 2 decades, and should choose. So my brother, for example, my older brother, is insistent that we teach our daughters Arabic. Beyond, like, he thinks that that's the highest priority language right now to teach. Yes. I used to think it was Spanish because I thought about 10 years ago that the economy that would emerge 2030 to 2050 is South America. But I think we have equal playing field now between Mandarin in China, the Middle East and South America, and interestingly Africa, because a lot of the African subcontinent African continent is coming into a formal economy and so on. So I think there's a bunch of factors. It's not just you have to pay attention to the economy, you have to pay attention to the distance, you have to pay attention to the hostilities that your students will potentially face, like you asked in the previous question. And I think as far as the academic rigor and the quality of that degree is concerned, I think parents have very little to worry about.
So then what is the worry? Why would an educationist like Michael Thompson warn against satellite campuses? And he's not the only one. It's like a number of educationists talk about the commercialization of campuses.
I think it is a commercialization endeavor, but it's a commercialization endeavor by an established, in often cases 100-plus-year-old brands. And traditionalists don't like innovation. So I think you should very much take that opinion with who it's coming from. So if you see innovative people who want to create more options for a wider range and type of person, they will want that. So I mean, you can have this conversation about why HSN doesn't have a female campus, right? There are very strong vested interests that don't want that.
Or why HSN would never go IB.
And there are people like me who think this conversation should happen every couple of years. Yeah. I don't think it should happen once every 20 years.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. So Ali, again, talking about alternatives for those who are applying this year and next year and this time. So one, you've said that the Middle East is a very viable alternative. What about our own higher education institutions?
When you think about alternatives, I want parents to think very freely. You see, I don't know the extent to which the academic content or knowledge that you are receiving in universities is what we should be sending children for anymore.
Yeah, because everything is now
available, right? I think we should advise students to match themselves with the experiences that they desire in preparation for the professional world they will enter. So this is the way in which I think about. So I have absolutely no interest, for example, in my kids going to the Ivy League.
But why? You are a product of
Yes, I'm not. I feel like.
And your company specialization is getting children into Ivy League.
Yeah, not just Ivy League. Maybe for me, like yesterday, I had a parent who came in with this. They signed up at Dream 3, lovely young girl, and she could, aim for an Ivy League institution easily. It would make us look pretty as well to get her into an Ivy League school. But all we talked about for an hour and a half were liberal arts colleges, because I think that's what's more suitable for that particular child. a quiet somewhere in like Middlebury, Vermont, or Amherst, Massachusetts, something there where that child will really blossom. And so when I think of, when I think of children in college, I think it's a unique time in your life. It's the first 7 years of your life, and then those 4 years where you can really shape into a different person. I'm sure you had some of that experience. I certainly did. Um, and so I think making that match right uh, is crucial, and I think ranking is just one piece of that. So I'm actually very interested for my children to go study in Turkey for college.
Really?
Yes, because I feel so much of their identities, their relationship with the world, their views of themselves are formed at the time when they leave the nest. And because their views and identities are challenged for the first time. Do I want those identities to be challenged in a Jewish centric, white dominated, um, no cultural overlap with my children, even though my kids are US citizens? Or would I, want them to be part of a historic culture that somehow they find some relatability into, some access, some hero that they've heard about, for example,
Good. You could just send them to Lums then.
or to Turkey, or I could send them to China because I went to visit China, visit a lot of educational institutions there, and everywhere I went, despite what we have been doing to China for the last 7-8 years, which has been less ceremonious than it should have been, but I felt that the way that in which Pakistanis are received in China, particularly amongst the educated classes, I've never had that reception anywhere in the world. And so, do I want my 18-year-old child's identity to be challenged at every single day, or do I want it to be reaffirmed and reinforced every single day in a world that has already become very brutal because of the digital world that we live in, right? So, what setup do I want them to have? What tailwinds do I want their life? And they're going to be a very minuscule part of the equation of the world, right? So I can put the headwinds of a culture that doesn't appreciate them or support them, where nobody looks like them, and so they are butting against headwinds. And that has some advantage as well. That's what
Yeah.
my experience was, and I
Exactly.
feel like
Resilience and
made
grit.
me stronger and
Yeah.
more perseverance and more persistence. And I think eventually my own decision will be different from my son, who is more of a sensitive mama's boy, than my younger daughter, who is more of a fighter, and she bullies her older brother as well, rides horses, is rough and tough compared to my son. So I think the answer, what I hope you can appreciate in this answer, is that this decision is a very nuanced decision and should be taken and appreciated as such, and not just driven by ranking. So while you say that I am a Harvard graduate, maybe you should also tell your audience that I dropped out of college 7 times. And
But you did eventually finish.
I did. I did finish many degrees, not just
Good.
one. But I think it was uh, after being misfit into the academia many times that I eventually found my path. So I've studied to become a doctor like you when I was at HSN. Then I was enrolled at LUMS as the first batch of the law class. At UT Austin, I went to study accounting and realized how boring it was, transferred towards economics, and then finally got my bachelor's degree in education. So this is just my college. And then post-college and then post-masters is other, not very dissimilar to your interests and
Yeah.
journey, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. But Ali, so basically what you were saying is that maybe the brand value of the Ivy Leagues doesn't matter. But when you look
No, it
at
matters.
data, yeah, when you
It
look
really
at
matters.
data,
I'm not saying it doesn't matter.
yeah. So by not sending our children there, or by not even choosing to send them there, we do them a disservice. Because so if you look at like basic figures, like which startups get more funding, startups out of Stanford, startups out of MIT, they're like so much
Okay, let me ask
data.
you a question. All of this you are eventually doing for what? To put a certificate that my kid went to Harvard, or for your child's happiness? So your goals have to be very clear.
But
If you want to live vicariously through your children, which I don't, then it's a very different story, right? Like my performance as a parent is judged by the certificate I put on my kid's wall. That is not me. I think that's the most destructive way to raise children, and I don't espouse to that, because the individuality of the child, which is what Allah Ta'ala has also given them, has given all of us, that it will not shine. So my individuality will shine through them, if that is my goal. If your goal is happiness, then why are you not discussing what is the happiness index at MIT? It's one of the lowest in the country. In terms of
Is it?
it's in terms of highly competitive colleges, historically MIT has had the highest suicide rate, right? So yes, there are facts and figures that MIT would publish, as would Harvard. But we know just in the last 10 years, the experience of two Pakistani children who've been to Harvard, who graduated actually, right? So I think we should be very mindful when we talk about these things of what it is that we are trying to achieve. Are we trying to achieve something for ourselves? Are we trying to achieve something for our children? And what is the purpose? Do we want, and I have raised money for 2 startups very successfully, alhamdulillah. That contributed zero happiness to my life.
Raising money for startups.
Yeah, absolutely.
But financial success, professional success are factors that factor into happiness.
Sure. And there are other factors as well. So if it's just financial success, then I think I'm the wrong person to be talking to, because my own life has been not
Not financially successful.
No, I am. I mean, as successful as I'd like to be, I hope I'm more successful. But it's not been a priority for me ever. It's been a more priority to live a fulfilled life, do interesting things, meet interesting people, and I think that is in and of itself a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because why do we go after money? We go after money for power. Power comes from influence. I feel like without money, I have enough influence wherever I need to exert it. We go for satisfaction, and satisfaction comes from the quality of our relationships with people. So if we start thinking and investing in a different direction from other preconceived notions that the American Academy or publications or these things will. Yeah, I've seen many miserable people at Harvard. Many, more than I would see. A larger average than I would see on the streets. I have seen more people on medication at Harvard, 5-6 medicines per day, than I saw my black kids who lived in the hood. So you see, like, we must take a holistic view. I know this is maybe making you uncomfortable as I'm saying it, but I think the holistic view is important, especially when it comes to children.
I just want to ask you, so you might have seen miserable people at Harvard, but that doesn't mean you will not see miserable people at LUMS.
Sure.
I know students at LUMS who take medications. I'm sure you know more of them. I'm a product of a medical college. I think 10% of the class would take, at that time, obviously, itni development isn't but like a 10 trial, arm, sham. I barely know medical students. So that obviously doesn't mean that we don't send our kids to medical schools, because the chances of drug abuse and suicides and work-life dissatisfaction are in some ways highest at medical schools. But also the sense of purpose medicine gives you is also amongst the highest. So it's it's sad. So to say that Harvard has unhappy students, how do you know your child will not be unhappy at NYU Shanghai or NYU Abu Dhabi?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying have a holistic view of the child. Some children will be incredibly happy at Harvard.
What kind of child would be incredibly happy at Harvard?
Somebody who loves to rub their shoulders all the time in a competitive environment. For example, they could join crew, get up at 5 a.m. every day, go to the gym, and then row on the Charles River for an hour. That person, if there's a person like that, would be incredibly happy. Some person who needs more of a one-to-one or more attention, who are used to that, who don't have that type of independence, may be much happier in a smaller, supportive environment like a liberal arts college. So I think that's what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that Harvard is not the best school for every child. Neither is MIT. Nor is LUMS for that matter, but LUMS, I was incredibly happy at LUMS. It was probably the happiest time of my life, or at least one of the happiest times of my life, was at LUMS. LUMS academic rigor is very, very high. So when I went to UT Austin, I actually went into the liberal arts program studying economics there, as I was mentioning, and I was taking some very tough courses. Like I remember the politics of international oil and courses like that. I thought the rigor for the Pakistan Studies course at LUMS was much higher than that at UT Austin, as an example. In Pakistan, the quality of student that comes to LUMS because of the selectivity is not dissimilar to the quality of student that's matriculating to the top schools in the US, for example. So, that sort of contributes as well. Is LUMS a good option for Pakistani students? Absolutely.
It is.
Yes.
But you don't think there's something to be said about just the process of growing up and moving away from home? Like, I do feel that we have a lot of like boy mans or man boys, and one of the reason is that we don't teach them. We don't teach our children, not just the boys, our girls, like basic pre-university or life skills. So when I went to Repton for Kayan, and Repton is a high school, and I was amazed to see that they actually had like life skill classes where they would teach you things like how do you do laundry, how do you
Yes.
sort laundry, better methods for sorting laundry. Let's integrate.
No, in
AI
our
into-
culture, we tell our daughters to bring a glass of water for our sons. This is the reality.
اور یا دونوں کے لیے available ہے.
We meaning mothers, particularly Lahori mothers, کہ ہمارے بیٹے, ہم اپنے بچوں کو کہتے ہیں یہ ہمارا شہزادہ ہے. میری جب ساس نے پہلی دفعہ میرے بیٹے کو کہا تھا میں نے شہزادہ ہے, میں نے کہا نہیں, یہ شہزادہ نہیں ہے, یہ ہمارے گھر کے ٹوٹم پول پہ جو مالی آتا ہے باہر اس سے نیچے ہے, بیکاز ہی ہیز ڈن نتھنگ ٹو ارن اینی آف دس. Let him go and do that, and don't please ever call him a Shahzada again, because I don't want my son to grow up thinking that he's a Shahzada. This is how we were brought up. We were brought up juti ki noke ke niche. We had 2 drivers and 3 cars in my nana's house. We were never allowed to take them. 5 boys coming to vacation, and we would spend our summers in our nana's house. They would say یہ گاڑیاں تو ہماری ہیں, تم لوگوں کے لیے بس ہے. ہم لوگوں کو گھوڑے چلانے جانا ہوتا تھا سمندر, ہم گلشن اقبال سے 3 بسیں لے کے 2.5 گھنٹے میں پہنچتے تھے سی ویو. کیوں ہم اپنے بچوں کے ساتھ یہ نہیں کرتے؟ کہ ہمارا دماغ خراب ہے. وائی؟ سو یو سی وی آر سبسٹیٹیوٹنگ. ناؤ دیٹ وی ہیو ریسورسز وی فیل. میں نے آپ کو کل کیا کہا تھا, فار ایگزامپل, دیٹ اف یور سن ڈزنٹ برنگ ہز کمپیوٹر, نیکسٹ ٹائم آئی ول سینڈ ہم ان اے رکشا ایٹ 45 degrees centigrade. The time after that he will never forget it. This is how we were brought up. And I think this especially men in today's society, in our society, they need that. آپ ان کو شہزادہ کرتی رہیں, وہ پھر وہ سوچیں گے کہ ہم شہزادے ہیں. اور جس طرح یہاں پہ مرد ہمیں نظر آتے ہیں لاہور میں 11 بجے سو کے اٹھ رہے ہیں, بالوں میں ہاتھ پھیرتے ہوئے نیچے آتے ہیں, کوئی ان کا ناشتہ بنا کے دے رہا ہے, غصے میں 2 لوگوں پہ چیختے ہیں, 1 بجے تیار ہوتے ہیں, جا کے دیکھیں کس کے ساتھ کافی پینی ہے, کون سے جم جانا ہے. دس واٹ مین آر لائک ان دس
But
سٹی.
then if you keep your child at LUMS, he's just staying in the same culture.
I don't think LUMS will reinforce that culture. That culture starts very, very early on. And I think we do. میرا بیٹا 5 سال کا ہے, اور یہ جنگ میں 3-4 سال سے لڑ رہا ہوں آلریڈی, کہ بھائی اس کو نہیں یہ چیزیں بتاؤ کہ وہ از اونلی سن ان لائک ہول جنریشن, اینڈ سو بٹ آئی فیل لائک یہ ہمیں, دس از اے پیرنٹنگ ایشو, دس از ناٹ اے یونیورسٹی اور اینی تھنگ لائک دیٹ. دس از اے مدرز, پرٹیکولرلی لاہوری مدرز اینڈ دیئر سنز ایشو. اور یہ ہمیں لمز نے نہیں سالو کر کے دینا, نہ ہی ہارورڈ نے کر کے دینا, اس پہ ہمیں خود تھوڑی انٹروسپیکشن کی ضرورت ہے.
So coming back to universities, you were saying that figure out what suits your child,
Yes.
right? But then there's another argument, which given how the rupee has devalued so much. So like I love reading like data that comes from universities, and there's actual data that shows that okay, if you're sending a kid abroad to a university which is not a top 20 university, the ROI is so low. The chances that aapka bacha who's a Pakistani citizen will need an H1B agar usne udhar kaam karna hai, will need sponsorships, and he's going to a university which is ranked like 60th or 70th, uska ROI itna kam hai ki aap apne plot bech kar usse bhej rahe ho, and then does it even make sense? So that's another argument for saying, a lot of people, like I hear this again and again, humne apne bacche ko keh diya hai agar America jana it has to be top 20, otherwise we are not paying the fees. And that economically also makes sense, because the ROI at Harvard is way higher, or Stanford or MIT, than it would be at, I don't know, City College, New York.
So what's the question?
But York, we were just discussing how you feel that decisions of where children should go to university should be based on their personalities, should be based on their affinities.
And you're saying
but
they
then
should
the
be
entire economics
Right. So
argument-
you're saying that it should be based on their financial achievement. For me, that is not a goal in life.
No, but
I don't care about my children's
But there has to
financial
be
achievement.
some ROI. Otherwise, تو پھر آپ بھیجو ہی نا یونیورسٹی, آپ انہیں اسکلز کالجز بھیج دو, آپ ان کے entrepreneur businesses شروع کرا دو. If you only want to go to university for just to tick in the box, If you're
No,
not
I
going
don't
to
want
look,
them to go to university for ticking the box. I want them to go to university to develop as complete, independent, sentient human beings
who will also contribute financially
who will also make money.
and who will also have professions that have some
Sure,
career
of
trajectory.
course, of
so
course.
the financial payoff and the career trajectory.
बट वो आप उसकी
and the
इन्वेस्टमेंट
network-
अगर आप इस तरह देखना चाहती हैं कि यार मैं इतने इन्वेस्ट कर रही हूँ और उसमें इतना निकलेगा मुझे, तो आप उनके लिए आज क्रिप्टो करेंसी लेके छोड़ दें और उनसे कहें तुम बेटा परचून की दुकान पे बैठो, 100% उसका ROI ज़्यादा होगा.
No, but as somebody at a counseling firm, do you not hear this from parents? That
I
if
don't,
I'm
but I
like-
hear a lot of things from parents. You know, that's not their job to tell me what, but my job is to advise them कि यार आप क्योंकि देखें पेरेंट्स का कसूर नहीं है ना, वो एक आप पेरेंट्स को किस तरह पता चलेगा, उनको यही पता चलेगा उन्होंने सुना है नाम, उन्होंने तो नहीं सुना हुआ ये लेट्स से कि मिडलबेरी कॉलेज वर्मोंट में
उन्होंने विलियम्स का नाम
हाँ
नहीं
विलियम्स का नहीं सुना हुआ, ब्रेन मॉर का नहीं सुना हुआ, वेल्सली का नहीं सुना हुआ,
Minerva का नहीं सुना हुआ.
ठीक
You
है.
know, Minerva was 1% this year and Harvard was 3%.
Yeah.
But if you mention Minerva, they'll be like, कहाँ है?
हाँ.
Which मुल्क?
Exactly right. So हमारा ये हम तो guidance है ना. So our job is to give guidance, and we will give the guidance not because of what the parent wants. हाँ हमें ये ना मैं अपनी कंपनी में भी लोगों को समझाता हूँ. We have a customer and we have a consumer. The customer is the parent. That's the person who's going to pay the money. The consumer is the person who's going to consume our service and reap the benefits of it, or be damaged by it if we don't provide a good quality service, right? So our service is oriented to the consumer. We are always going to focus on the child and what we believe is best for the child. And in parallel, we will continue educating the parent because that's our responsibility towards the customer. But what we owe as our success is the quality of the match that we make, which we believe will ultimately lead to the most happiness for the child. If the child is broke and hungry, will they be happy? No, absolutely not. So I hope you're not taking, that's not the message I'm trying to give. But at 80% earning compared to, let's say, graduating from MIT over the course of a lifetime, if I can have 140% happiness versus 60%, I will go for that any day of my profession,
So I think what you're trying to say is that when deciding which university your child should go to, move away from geography, move away from brands, move away
I think geography
from,
is important.
So-
Brand is also important. I'm not saying move away from anything.
But like think
I'm
maybe a
saying
little
that if
broader.
you're thinking about just ranking, add to that size of college, geography, concentrations available,
country
weather,
it's based in.
weather.
Really?
Yeah. Climate. I mean, climate is one of the most. When we look at statistics, so it depends on which statistics you're looking at as well, right?
You're looking at all the happiness meters. It
Yeah,
seems.
I'm looking at persistence meters, like what factors enable students to persist through college. Not just and parents will often only look at matriculation, which as I'll explain the difference. Matriculation is कि आपका दाखला कहाँ पे हो गया या आपने start कहाँ कर लिया. Persistence is how you perform over the next 4 years. For me, persistence is more important. If you are the top 10% of your graduating class at Amherst College, and you are the bottom 10% of your graduating class at MIT because of persistence reasons, I would take that top 10% with a smaller, lesser known brand any day over the bottom 10% of a much more. So I'm saying brand is important. It has made all the difference in my life. So, but it is one piece of the story as far as my happiness is concerned. Like, and notice what I said to you, some of the happiest time of my life was actually at LUMS, not at UT Austin, not at Boston College, not at MIT, not at Harvard, where all of these places that I've been affiliated with, right? LUMS था. क्यों? क्योंकि उसमें geography थी, उसमें culture था, उसमें मेरे लोग थे. I very much feel like a Pakistani, and 20 years later missing that. With no family in Pakistan today, I'm back because that's the thing that I miss. Some people will miss. Some people will want more money in their lives and they should absolutely go for that. They should go for a hedge fund job in New York or become a lawyer at one of the top firms in New York. And that is, there's no value judgment on that. The value judgment is on not creating enough pathways for your children to be able to identify and explore and go deepen with their interests, not with our interests as parents. That's the only point.
Yeah. Okay. So last question on like college
Sure.
counselings, and then I wanted to move out to like education in Pakistan as general. So, I do feel that as parents in Pakistan, we're still very ill informed about the university, how universities work, and how they rank applications and what they look for. And I think that one reason could be that the idea of women going to, all these higher education universities and coming back, बहुत कम percentage है. And since women generally drive decisions for their students, so I hear like a lot of skewed views. So I was wondering if you could explain. So are grades still the end all and be all when it comes to a competitive admission instead of using brands or
Sure.
admissions to very selective universities? And then there are these terms that counselors have been throwing around, like passion projects and interest spikes and etc. So, in a nutshell, could you explain what is it that we should be working on with our
You asked
children?
a question about female in higher education. I want to address that because it's something that really, really um, impacted me while I was a faculty at Harvard.
Okay.
But I want to come back to that. Let me answer your nutshell
Okay,
question
sure.
first. In a nutshell, um, there is a rank ordering of who cares about just grades, who cares about grades and somewhat about the profile and other things, and who care about grades but also care a lot about the profile. So the UK doesn't care about anything but grades. If
Right.
you're targeting the UK, focus on the
And
grades.
don't spend any money on extracurriculars.
I
Because
mean,
you're going to need all the money you have
हाँ.
to pay UK
अच्छा
universities.
अब उसमें ये है कि
Because उधर financial aid तो नहीं
sure,
मिलती.
sure. But I mean, if you're going for the ultra competitive, so
Like Oxford,
Oxbridge,
Cambridge.
yeah, then you want your
Research
depth in
publications.
academic interests. So that could be through research publication, that could be through reading very deeply enough that it informs your writing, and that will be visible. That prepares you well for interviews because those admissions are interview based. But you can say that as a general rule, the UK, in a nutshell, cares the least about anything outside of academics. They have a very simple
Right,
formula.
yeah.
That's number one. Canada and Australia, somewhat mixed. They still care a lot about academics, but they will, if let's say one student is at a 50 and one student is at a 55, but the student who's at a 50 in terms of their ranking, their sort of profile is far superior to the 55, they may consider that. In America, I think that I could almost say that there's equal weightage. So at the top universities, some high academic performance is just table stakes. And table stakes meaning like, इतना तो आपको करना ही है.
And अगर नहीं है तो फिर don't even apply there.
तो
Like if you
हाँ.
don't have a 1500 SAT, don't apply to these top places.
I think 1500. I mean, if you have a 1350 SAT, I would say, unless you have a very stellar profile, other things like say, SAT में 1350 हैं, but आपके O level में 10 A's हैं, और आपका.
फिर apply कर लो.
Yeah, I mean, I think universities that look at admissions holistically are also aware of the challenges of standardized testing and are often going test optional, test mandatory, ये वो सारा, because standardized tests के ऊपर उनकी भी reservations हैं. I mean, we've been part of discussions on this at Harvard for many years. So, सिर्फ standardized test पे yes, but if you have like 2 A's and 3 C's and 4 B's, then I think you're better off looking at other places because those applications are very intense and you may have better chances elsewhere.
Yeah.
SAT पे मैं कहूँगा कि there's probably
Yeah.
more flexibility than your high school transcripts.
So as parents, to support our kids' higher education dreams, do you think the best thing we can do is help them academically, like provide academic support if they need it? Because it seems like 60% of the decisions they're wondering.
Yes, at least, even in the American Academy.
Yeah. So pehle get that sorted, and then maybe work.
And then if
on-
you're in the OA level system, then I think that it's helpful for parents to know, as you said, like many times parents don't know, that your O level grades are matter a lot more
than the A levels.
level
The
grades.
O
yes.
level and the AS.
And then also parents should also know, I mean, use your platform to inform them that ninth grade onwards is when the profile that the student builds and the activities they're involved in ninth grade onwards is what colleges care about.
Yeah.
Before that, it's you get a clean slate ninth grade on. So if you're a ninth grade parent who's listening,
This is your chance.
yeah, this if you even if you've been frustrated with your child's academic performance thus far, I think you can communicate with them and to yourself that this is a fresh start, and everyone is on a level playing field from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Ali, coming back to college counseling.
I thought we
Is
were
it-
moving on from college counseling. We can stay here if you, yeah.
Okay.
Do a lot of your parents are they thinking about a lot of your audience is thinking about college admission and such?
Yes.
Okay,
So we
great.
get a lot of questions. But one question that we get is, why do we need college counseling? Because with everything else, college counseling has become very, very expensive. Like I think the average counselor is now charging about $8,000, $10,000, give or take. For the
Average thing, I
entire-
think that would be probably the highest end. The best of the best would probably.
So what are the lower ends charging? The ones I've spoken to are in the 8 to 10 range. So maybe
You're a very high end person, I think, in general. No, so I think if they start.
at $5,000.
You
the
know, much
entire-
less as well.
Acha.
So I have my niece went to college, got services from somebody for admission in the UK. She had a very straightforward path. I mean, she had I don't want to discuss her case too much, but it was not a complex. In some ways, it was a complex application for her residency status, etc., to the UK, and in other ways, like admission was straightforward. And she paid 500,000 rupees for that, and was very happy for
With the
that.
services she got.
I mean, the service that she needed was to reduce her fees in the UK, and this gentleman who she went to knew how to do that. So there's all types of things that people are doing. And there's, by the way, there's free college counseling services available as well.
In Pakistan?
In Pakistan, they are called
Oh.
platform universities, and so universities will actually pay college counselors.
Yes, but you're talking about the foundation courses in the UK.
Not necessarily foundation courses. There are universities. Some you might be surprised by. I think King's College and Imperial College are platform universities as well.
So they pay a
They
college
take they
counselor.
take the fees from you, the parent, and they pay the college counselor either the first semester's fee or the half of the first semester's fee, depending on the deal they have with them. And this is what most college counseling firms in Pakistan are doing today,
then
is to refer students to firms or to colleges that have the highest kickback. And that's certainly not going to, that decision is not going to be driven by what's best for your child. It's those decisions are driven by what's best for the college counseling firm.
That's quite shocking that Imperial and King's are also
Yeah,
there.
you'll be surprised at other universities
I
named
thought
as
it was
well.
mainly like unknown European universities.
No,
that were
no.
doing this.
Hundreds of US universities are platform universities as well. The vast majority of UK universities are platform universities as well.
Really?
Yeah, the ones I can say with confidence are not
At Oxford, Cambridge.
Oxford, Cambridge. I think the London School of Economics is not a platform university. Don't quote me on Imperial and King because I know for a fact that one of them is. I think both of them might be. So in the UK, the UK academia is pure business as far as I'm concerned at this
And
point.
you don't feel that's a great experience for a child. Do you feel UK education is, given after Brexit, everything in the UK has nosedived? Do you feel UK education is also
I'm not a
nosedived?
fan. I never have been.
Yeah, neither. I'm not a
Because I
fan
think
either.
that what I appreciate a lot, so the UK is a dying country. The UK, I don't see a path to survival for the UK, and I'll very quickly say why. There's currently 55% of the population is on welfare services from the state, and that's being paid by 45%. So that math doesn't add up. How can you have more people needing services than people who are contributing? So if you've seen the politics of the UK over the last 10 years, I think they've had 7 prime ministers or something crazy like that, because there's no consistency in policy, and what that's resulted in is like the latest endeavor to meet their tax collection targets. जहाँ हमारे भी होता है ना कि सैलरी क्लास को ठोके जाओ ठोक, तो उनका ये कि उन्होंने अल्ट्रा रिच के ऊपर टैक्स लगाया, and ultra rich has started to leave the country. So now
And
there's
Dubai.
and now they're stuck in a double entendre where they already need 45% to pay for the 55, and of that 45 जो यहाँ से सबसे ज़्यादा टैक्स आ रहा था वो लोग अपनी citizenships give up करके जा रहे थे. Actually don't know with the debt that the UK has what future they have as a country, and they are really worried about it as well. So this, I think some of these things are purely now becoming they're like money drivers. So that's one piece. The other piece is that much as I have some reservations about the American, particularly academia ki aaj jo halat hai, but what I have always loved and appreciated about the American college education is the 2 years of a common core. And for your audience, I can explain very briefly what that is. In the first 2 years of a general, so agar aap UK mein jayenge, you will have 3 years of college. And from the go, you will have a declared major. And all the coursework that you take, or let's say the vast majority, 80 to 90% of the coursework you will take will be, let's say, in automotive engineering. Whereas in America, this is not what will happen. So in America, you will have a 4-year college degree, जो मबनी है 120 credit hours पे. So you do 30 credit hours per year. The first 60 credit hours, which is called the Common Core. The core of the American college experience is in the liberal arts. What that means is that these 60 hours of coursework will come from 20 courses that are all in different areas. So you'll have
dance, theatre,
politics.
even if you're a pre-medical.
Yes, even if you're in pre-medical, you'll have 2 courses of government, 2 courses of history, 2 courses of economics, 1 course of accounting, and then other art, history. Now, so you can select from areas of interest, and you are encouraged to select from areas of interest that create a wide foundation. And then you're not even required to declare a major in most cases, but till the 3rd year. And so the 3rd year is when you start to concentrate. So आप एक कुएं के मेंढक नहीं होते, या आप एक you don't have, and this is what I see now in professionals who are 10-15 years into their professional life, those that studied or qualified from the UK versus, so UK has a very specialized education, whereas America at the undergraduate level has a more generalized education. And I think that given how the economies are going to shift, concentrations are going to be a lot less attractive than people who can think with a diverse skill set, who can communicate around a wide range of issues, who can resolve differences across cultural contexts. So I think uske liye ye jo ek wider base of education hai, that's very helpful.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I feel that is one of the best things about the US education system. So coming back to paths that our children can take, do you feel, so the argument that college is no longer needed has really picked up pace and has become like a much louder argument ever since AI stepped in, and then entrepreneurship stepped in. And even in my field, journalism, like our professors who were teaching journalism would say, the best way to learn journalism is to do it.
Yeah.
There are, and especially with entrepreneurship, like
Sure.
I'm a tech entrepreneur, you're a tech entrepreneur. I never studied entrepreneurship. I learned through accelerator programs.
Sure.
A lot of people learn through the Y Combinator or other accelerators. So there is this entire argument that, okay, why are we spending all this money and time and effort in sending a child to a school to become an entrepreneur? Like that remains like a joke. Acha jab naukri hi nahi karni, jab karna hi, when you are going to carve out your own path, carve it out now.
I think this discussion actually didn't start with AI coming in. So around 2013, 14, 15, when AI was not available for public consumption, the big tech companies in the US, so Google, Microsoft, Tesla, Facebook, several others, started moving away from having a degree requirement. होता क्या था पहले, और आज भी यही होता है in most fields, कि top end employers, meaning those who attract the best students or who are able to pay the highest salary. So law firms in New York, your consulting firms, your JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, etc., Citibanks of the world, they would rely very much on the university selection criteria to pick the cream of the economy. कि यार इनके पास 10,000 बच्चे अप्लाई करते हैं हार्वर्ड में, या 20,000 अप्लाई करते हैं, ये उनमें से 1100 लेते हैं, हम उनमें से 100 लेते हैं.
اور وہ بھی جو ٹاپ کے ہیں.
ٹھیک ہے. تو ہمیں اتنا سوچنے کی ضرورت نہیں ہے کیونکہ وہ تو یونیورسٹی 400 سال سے ایک سسٹم بنا کے بیٹھے. ہم تو نئی کمپنی ہے فیس بک, یہ 400 سال سے سسٹم بنا کے بیٹھی ہوئی ٹو پک اپ دا کریم فرام دا ورلڈ. وی نیڈ ٹو پک اپ دا کریم فرام دیم. So this is how hiring in the US or hiring at the
And it's still like I still know firms in the US that only open up resumes from like Harvard.
Yes,
or
yes,
Stanford.
yes, yes, yes.
Like وہ دیکھیں گے,
ہاں.
they won't even look at.
بھائی ان کو 20 بندے چاہیے, ان کو 100 اگر ہارورڈ کے اپلائی کر رہے ہیں
Yeah, why should we even?
یا اور ان کی فرم میں جو پچھلے بیٹھے ہیں 100 ان میں سے 80 ہارورڈ کے ہیں, تو وہ چاہتے بھی ہیں ہماری طرح کی ہیں, وہ یہ اس طرح کی نورے جمورے کیوں لائیں. ایک مائنڈ سیٹ کی بات ہے نا. تو وہ چیز شفٹ ہو گئی. انہوں نے ٹیک کمپنیز نے کہا کہ یار ہم تو اس سے بہتر سلیکٹیوٹی کرائٹیریا بنا سکتے ہیں کیونکہ
Who is already a coder.
یا اور وہ ہمیں اور پھر انہوں نے کیا کیا کہ یار انہوں نے کہا ہم نالج سے جا رہے ہیں اسکلس کی طرف. وی ڈونٹ کیئر واٹ یو نو, وی کیئر واٹ یو کین ڈو. تو اب ہم کیا کر رہے ہیں کہ آپ کالج میں ہیں نہیں ہیں, 2 سال پڑھیں 1 سال پڑھیں, آپ باقی ٹیسٹ میں بیٹھیں, یہ پاس کرتے ہیں تو نکل جاتے ہیں.
So all
So I
tech
think-
companies now have tests.
I don't know if all tech companies
But a
have
lot
tests,
of
but
them.
they have their own pathways to hiring now.
And generally they're very like skill
And
dependent.
part of
Coding,
yes, so
Excel.
part of that one thing, while they will take students who are, I beg your pardon, college graduates as well, that no longer has remained a stringent requirement, let's put it that way. And that opens the door. So وہی اب وہی آپ اپنے سوال کے اوپر ٹرانسپوز کریں کہ ٹیک کمپنیز کیا سوچیں. کیا کالج ڈگری کی تو ضرورت نہیں ہے ہمیں جو کام کروانا ہے اس کے لیے, رائٹ. سو اگر آپ نے اپنے بچوں کو یہ, سو ون آف مائی ویری کلوز کولیگز اینڈ اگر میرا ایک اپنے دوستوں کے ساتھ نے سر جو میرے ساتھ کام کرتے ہیں, یو سین لائک a lot of young people work in my companies, ان کے ساتھ میرا اینڈ آئی آلسو اونلی لائک ٹو ورک ود دا بیسٹ آف دا بیسٹ. میں نے سوچا ہے کہ میں نے آئی ہیو ارن دا رائٹ ان مائی لائف اتنی محنت کرنے کے بعد کہ یار اگر میں دفتر جا رہا ہوں, آپ کی کہتی ہیں نا تم دفتر بھی اتنے ہوتے ہو اور چیزیں بھی کرتے ہو, کیونکہ مجھے دفتر جانے کا شوق نہیں ہے, مجھے آئی لائک ٹو بی آؤٹ ڈور. سو اگر میں دفتر جا رہا ہوں تو آئی اونلی وانٹ ٹو بی سراؤنڈیڈ ود دا بیسٹ آف دا بیسٹ. اف یو آر ورکنگ ود دا بیسٹ یو ہیو ٹو گیو دیم سرٹن کنڈیشنز ٹو ورک ان. اینڈ جب میں I hired very very bright, I think of them as my kids as well, young graduates, and I promised them one of 3 outcomes in 3 years if they work with me. One is that they'll go abroad to study. 2 is that I will help them. If they don't want to work with me after 3 years, I will find them their next job, which will be in the field of interest of their or expertise. And the third is that they should become a partner in my firm, because all of my businesses are service businesses. They are driven by the quality of the people. So ye 3 cheezein hoti hain meri. Either you go abroad to study, or you find the job of your dreams after working with me, and I'll help you find it, or you become a partner in my company.
You should add that you'll fund their next venture.
No, I won't. Because I don't have the money to fund any. I'm trying to fund my own.
Fine funding.
Well, وہ تو اگر کرنا ہے تو جاب وہی ہے نا کہ whatever their professional endeavor is, I will help them with that, and I have. So one such person that this applies to, یار اس بندے نے میرے پاس آنے سے پہلے when we were working together, he had already had an MBA from LUMS. He had done 20 internships. کوئی شری لنکا میں کی ہوئی تھی, کوئی کہیں کی ہوئی تھی. It wasn't like a rich kid, but he was a very passionate kid about the workforce, and he's an educationist as well. تو یہ کرتے 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 اس نے اتنی ساری چیزیں کی کہ he actually really knew what he's happy with and what he's not happy with in life, right? And so بعد میں ابھی اس نے پھر یو پین سے ماسٹرز کیا in entrepreneurship and education etc. at the age of 35, and so I think یہ that School of Hard Knocks جو ہے نا وہ بھی بڑا زبردست کالج ہے.
Oh, I love watching that YouTube channel.
I haven't seen that YouTube channel.
Really?
No, School of Hard Knocks is a phrase that we use in America.
But there's a YouTube channel.
No, I didn't know that.
School of Hard Knocks.
Haan.
And it's a fantastic way to learn from life.
Haan.
So he interviews successful people and asks them, آپ کیسے successful ہیں؟
ہاں.
اور نہ سکھائے.
تو School of Hard Knocks جو ہے یہ زندگی کا بھی فنومینا ہے, and I have an immense respect for that. یار لوگوں کو دیکھیں, میری زندگی کا سب سے بڑا مقصد یہ نہیں ہے کہ میں پیسے کماؤں, لیکن لوگوں کے لیے یہ بہت بڑا مقصد ہے, بہت بڑی ڈرائیونگ فورس ہے. اینڈ میں HSN کالج سے پڑھا ہوں, مشکل سے پڑھا. کبھی میرے ابا کو کبھی کسی سے پیسے مانگنے پڑتے تھے فیس دینے کے لیے, ہاں کبھی کبھی ہو جاتا ہے. اور میرے اور دوست بھی تھے, ایسے لوگ بھی تھے جیسے میں, ان کو ایسا کوئی مسئلہ نہیں تھا, لیکن ایسے بھی تھے جن کو کبھی یہ مسئلہ ہو جاتا تھا.
And you knew that your father spent hard time paying the
ہاں, time to time, and that's totally fine. My friends knew as well. ہمارے پاس کبھی ایسی گاڑی ہوتی تھی جس کو ایچ ایس این کالج کے پارکنگ لاٹ میں دھکا لگا رہے ہوتے تھے دوست اسٹارٹ کرنے کے لیے, ایسا
But
تھا.
did it not affect you? Did you not feel like you were less,
No.
or you didn't feel like frustrated that you didn't have
No,
the big cars?
No, I didn't even realize, like, you know, that my friends had big cars. My best friend owns half of Sargodha, and I didn't realize that till one day we were in, یہ میرا کلاس 5 سے دوست تھا ایچ ایس این میں, ہم اے لیولز میں جا رہے تھے اسلام آباد ایس اے ٹی کا ٹیسٹ دینے, تو وہ ایک بورڈ پہ لکھا ہوا نظر آیا اس کا لاسٹ نیم, اینڈ یو نو فیملی لاسٹ نیم, اینڈ آئی سیڈ یہ کیا لکھا ہوا ہے, تو یہ سیڈ یہ ہمارا گاؤں ہے. میں نے کہا کہاں؟ آپ موٹر وے پہ 150 پہ جا رہے ہیں. اس نے کہا یہ, میں نے کہا تو ہم بڑی دیر سے چل رہے ہیں, کہ سارا میرا گاؤں ہے. میں نے کہا یہ کس کی زمین ہے؟ کہ تو ہماری, میرے ابا کی. آئی ہیڈ نو آئیڈیا for 10 years that I was there. HSN was a very different place at that time as well. You could be friends with anyone and you had no idea. I was friends with one of the prime ministers. I was class fellows with one of the prime minister's 3 sons, and I had no idea what their family was or what they. And so I think it very much, we had no consciousness about finances as a family. My family, alhamdulillah, came from whatever, but like my father was very disinterested in money also. So coming back to what we were discussing, کہ دیکھیں اب ایک انسان ہے, اس کی اگر یہ سچویشن, تو میں ایون دو میرا بھی کوئی انٹرسٹ نہیں تھا اس میں, بٹ آئی ایم ویری ویری cognizant of the privilege of having attended an institution like HSN in a place like Pakistan. So میں یہ جو آپ سے آج باتیں کر رہا ہوں, یہ اسی اس کانٹیکس میں کر رہا ہوں کہ مجھے اس چیز کا پتہ ہے, لیکن کسی اور انسان کی اگر یہ سچویشن نہیں ہے, اس کو پیسے کمانے ہیں, تو maybe the School of Hard Knocks is a much better teacher and has more ROI than, اور یہ ROI کی بات پہ تو میں نے آپ کو بتا دیا, بچے کو لگا کے دیں پرچون کی دکان اور کرپٹو کرنسی میں انویسٹ کر دیں جو پلاٹ بیچ رہے ہیں, 10 سال نہیں تو 15 سال میں تو وہ جتنے اس نے کالج کے بعد کمانے وہ زیادہ ہی کما لیں گے, but then he will be at a پرچون کی دکان.
Okay, so Ali, now that we've spoken about higher education at length, I want to talk about parenting. Okay. Because I think eventually, like, how we parent our babies is the kind of teenagers they become, and then a lot of the issues that we were talking about. But I especially want to talk about parenting in the context of raising successful children. So, or raising children with grit and raising children with resilience. So, whenever I interact with like Indian students, through my children, I am amazed at how much more discipline they have, and how professional they are, how further they're willing to go. Just their skill sets on basic AI tools are way more advanced. And then even when you look at universities abroad, Pakistani bache pahunch jate hain to some universities, but we don't really shine in that society which values grit, persistence, discipline. We don't have, the CEO of Google or any of these from Pakistan. And I feel it comes down to what we are teaching a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. So I know you like a really involved dad. So tell me, what are we doing wrong, or are we doing anything wrong? اب آپ نے یہ نہیں کہنا کہ I don't really care about my child making a Google CEO salary.
نہیں, میں یہ نہیں کہہ رہا. میں یہ کہہ رہا ہوں, I think the comparison between India and Pakistan, Indian and Pakistani diaspora in the global world is unfair. I'll tell you why. یہ چیز مجھے بھی امریکہ جا کے سمجھ آئی. جب میری بیوی نے ڈینٹسٹ کالج میں باسٹن یونیورسٹی میں داخلہ لیا, she was this was an international class of 85. There were 2 Pakistani students. There were 51 Indian students.
I'm sure.
And so یہ 53 ہو گئے 2 ملا کے, and then 23 were from the rest, 22 were from the rest of the world, or 32 جتنے بھی رہتے ہیں. جو 52 پاکستانی, جو 52 انڈین اسٹوڈنٹس تھے نا, they came from 51 different dental colleges in India. So یہ پروگرام ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ آپ نے ایک ڈینٹل ڈگری اپنے ہوم کنٹری سے کی ہوئی ہے, اینڈ دین یو گو فار یور ماسٹرز. یو ہیو ٹو اسٹڈی فار ڈینٹل, یو ہیو ٹو اسٹڈی فار میڈیسن, یو جسٹ گو فار ریزیڈنسی. سو جب یہ ہم لوگ ان سے ملاقات ہوتی رہتی تھی, تو یہ جو 51 ڈفرینٹ ڈینٹل کالجز سے آئے ہوئے تھے, یہ سب پبلک اسکول سے. سو جو جال پبلک ایجوکیشن کا انڈیا میں پھیلا ہوا ہے نا 1.5 ارب لوگوں کے اوپر, وہ ہم امیجن ہی نہیں کر سکتے بینگ ان پاکستان. ہمارے پاس اس وقت ہیں 6.5 کروڑ 60 لاکھ بچے آف اسکول گوئنگ ایج. وہاں یہ نمبر 100 کروڑ کا ہے, اور ہمارے جو 6 کروڑ 60 لاکھ ہیں ان میں سے 2.30 کروڑ اسکولوں کے باہر ہیں اس وقت. ان میں سے 2.30 کروڑ پرائیویٹ اسکولوں میں ہیں, اینی ویئر فرام 300 روپیز اے منتھ ٹو TNS 100,000 روپیز اے منتھ, اور پھر 2 کروڑ کوئی 40 لاکھ ہیں ہمارے جو گورنمنٹ اسکولوں میں انرولڈ ہیں. ٹھیک ہے, گورنمنٹ اسکولوں کی کوالٹی آپ کو پتہ ہے. انڈیا میں ہمارے یہاں پورے پاکستان میں کہ اگر آپ گورنمنٹ اسکول ملا لیں تو شاید آپ کو ایک بچہ, یعنی 2.30 کروڑ بچوں کی ایجوکیشن ملا لیں تو شاید آپ کو ایک بچہ ملے جو یونیورسٹی آف میساچوسیٹس ایمہرسٹ میں جس کا داخلہ ہو سکتا ہے. بٹ وہاں جو 100 کروڑ کا پبلک ایجوکیشن سسٹم ہے اس میں بچے نکل کے ہارورڈ, MIT, یہ اسٹینفورڈ جاتے ہیں. سو آئی تھنک ہماری انویسٹمنٹ انٹو آر پبلک ایجوکیشن از ویری ڈفرنٹ فرام انڈیاز انویسٹمنٹ انٹو پبلک ایجوکیشن. انڈیا کریٹس 1 million engineers a year. We create 3,000, for example. We have matched.
But is our 3,000 equivalent in
No,
quality?
no way.
ایک تو numbers میں ہی ماشاء اللہ
نہیں, کوئی کمپیریزن ہی نہیں ہے, کیونکہ دیکھیں نا وہ 10 لاکھ ہر سال نکالتے ہیں, ان کے جاتے ہیں ملک سے باہر, ان کے سب سے غریب لوگ جاتے ہیں, پسماندہ حال لوگ جاتے ہیں باہر کے ملکوں میں, ہمارے سب سے امیر جاتے ہیں.
Yeah, because the rich Indians want to stay in India.
Yeah, and our rich, yeah. So یہ ہماری ایک ٹریجڈی بھی ہے, ہمارا ایک المیہ ہے. So یہ چیزیں سمجھنا ضروری ہے when we compare. ان کے سب سے ڈیسپریٹ لوگ جاتے ہیں ویسٹ میں, جنہوں نے, ہمارے تو یہاں سے پیٹ بھرے ہوئے جاتے ہیں, ماں باپ پیچھے سے ڈالروں پہ ڈالر بھیج رہے ہوتے ہیں کہ کوئی, جیسے آپ کہہ رہی ہیں کوئی پلاٹ بیچ رہا ہے. کیوں بیچ رہے ہیں پلاٹ؟ پاگل ہیں کیا؟ پلاٹ آپ نے کمائے اپنے لیے, بچوں کے لیے تو نہیں کمائے, کیوں بیچ رہے ہیں؟ مجھے تو سمجھ ہی نہیں آتی ہے آج تک. بھائی جس اولاد کو پڑھنا ہے اس کے لیے پیسے اویلیبل ہیں دنیا میں, جس کو نہیں پڑھنا اس کے لیے ماں باپ کے پلاٹ اویلیبل ہیں. اس کو بھی پتا ہے کہ ماں باپ کے پلاٹ اویلیبل, میں پڑھ کے کیوں کروں؟ پڑھنے میں محنت لگتی ہے نا. جن کے پلاٹ نہیں اویلیبل ہیں, میرا کوئی پلاٹ اویلیبل نہیں تھا 18 سال کی عمر کے بعد سے, نہ میرے باپ نے میری شادی کے, نہ میری گاڑی کے, نہ میری پڑھائی کے, کسی چیز, نہ میری اولاد کے پیدا ہونے کے, کسی چیز کے پیسے نہیں دیے, نہ ہی میں نے مانگے 18 سال کی عمر کے بعد, کیونکہ مجھے پتا تھا منی از اویلیبل. I can either ask my father for, with the result that I dropped out of college many times because sometimes I couldn't make the money work, but it's available. Now I know it's available. Now I know how to go after it. Okay, it may not be available at Harvard, but I eventually got to Harvard as well on a full merit-based scholarship, the only Pakistani to achieve that scholarship ever. So it's available. It's out there. انڈین کو پتا ہے کہ میرے ماں باپ, میری ماں نے تو میرے اپنے کڑھے جو شادی کے تھے وہ بیچ کے مجھے اس اکیڈمی میں ڈال دیا, جس کی وجہ سے میرا گورنمنٹ کالج میں داخلہ ہو گیا. اس کے بعد وہ کچھ نہیں کر سکتی میرے لیے, تو کرنا ہے تو میں نہیں کرنا ہے. جس کو یہ پتا ہے وہ محنت کرے گا, جس کو یہ نہیں پتا اس کو پتا ہے ماں باپ کے پلاٹ بھی ہیں, انہوں نے ٹیکس بھی ایویڈ کیا ہوا ہے, انہوں نے باہر کمپنی بھی بنائی ہوئی ہے, اور وہ گاڑی بھی بیچ دیں گے, لینڈ کروزر بھی گھر پہ کھڑی, اس نے کیا کرنا ہے پڑھ کے.
So you think we're doing a disservice by selling the plots?
What do you think?
I don't know, I'm still confused. I'm
I think
confused if
okay,
privilege is a disservice or if privilege is an advantage.
Privilege is an advantage always. The way you exercise it can be a service or a disservice to your child. آپ نے وارن بفیٹ کا اس سے پہلے ایک کوٹ دیا تھا. وارن بفیٹ دیکھیں کون سی گاڑی میں چلاتا ہے, کون سے گھر میں رہتا ہے, اپنے بچوں کے ساتھ اس نے کیا کیا ہے, دیکھ لینا تو پتہ چل جائے گا.
But agar Bill Gates کو دیکھیں, his daughter went to top universities, all paid for by her dad. We can assume that she had private tutoring. So, you know, Oxford mein, really interesting talk just happened, where this guy came and said, I'm standing in this room where there are 100 Oxford students. 80 of you went to private schools in the UK. And 80, out of those 80, let's say 60 of you had private tutors for this. So he's like, I'm standing in the most disproportionate representation of the future possible. And he literally said that almost all of you have gotten here because your parents spent the money or the time and the effort for private tutoring, for college counseling, XYZ, extracurriculars, internships, kar ke انہوں نے ان کو آکسفورڈ پہنچا دیا. So hence the question.
اچھا اب یہ بتائیں کہ یہ جو 80 بچے ہیں یہ آکسفورڈ سے نکلنے کے بعد کیا کر رہے ہیں؟
Yeah, I know, that's the big question.
No, I want to know.
Because now the path, یہ تو خیر they were still at Oxford.
وہ نوکری تو نہیں کرنے جا رہے نا, وہ تو اپنے ماں باپ کی پریولیجز میں ہی واپس پلگ ان پلے ہو رہے ہیں. بھائی اگر آپ کے ماں باپ نے آپ کی پڑھائی کے اوپر 1.5 لاکھ پاؤنڈ پر ایئر خرچہ ہے تو آپ 40,000 کی نوکری کو کیا اوقات دیں گے؟ رائٹ؟ I mean, think about that, right? So وہ تو اس آپ تو بات کر رہی ہیں کہ یہاں سے سندر پچائی کس طرح بننا ہے. وہ سندر پچائی کے ماں باپ تو اس کو نہیں یہ پرائیویٹ ٹیوٹرنگ اور یہ ساری کہانیاں چلی تھی.
So do you feel that we should remove then privilege from our kids, remove the tuition culture, remove.
No, I'm not saying that. Dekhiye, we have to compete in a world where these things are a requirement.
Yeah.
But the attitude we have towards them is very different. ना देखिए भाई, अगर मैं अपने बच्चे की फीस दे रहा हूँ, एक आपसे जिक्र हो रहा था एक प्राइवेट ट्यूटरिंग की, तो मैं उसकी मतलब लाइक ही हैज टू स्वेट एंड ब्लड एंड स्वेट फॉर दैट इवन टुडे एट 5-year-old. जहाँ वो चीज़ ख़त्म हो जाएगी, मेरा बच्चा इंशाल्लाह ताला विल बी 3rd 4th generation of HSN when he goes. I am very clear if he is not studying there, मेरे पैसे हराम के नहीं हैं. और मैंने अपनी बीवी को भी ये कहा हुआ है. तो मैं बहुत शौक है HSN पढ़ाने का, मुझे भी बहुत शौक है, लेकिन जिस दिन ये शौक की कदर नहीं होगी तो फिर 1 साल के लिए डालेंगे किसी पीले रंग के टाट वाले स्कूल में ताकि कदर आए, और फिर जब कदर होगी तो फिर अगर नहीं कदर होगी तो फिर वहीं चलेगा. क्योंकि मुझे तो पता है कि एजुकेशन की कदर किसको है. मैंने वो देखे हैं इंडियन स्टूडेंट्स इनकी आप बात कर रही हैं, वो लाखों में आके
So you think that grit comes from actual circumstances?
Or where do you think? नहीं, do you think there is another way to teach grit?
But let's say if my children are.
अगर आप स्पून फीड कर रहे हैं अपने बच्चों को,
तो फिर मैं कैसे ग्रिट पैदा करूं?
स्पून फीड करना मैंने आपको बताया है, स्पून फीड करना बंद करें, गाड़ियां भेजना बंद करें, रिक्शों में ट्रैवल कराएं अपने बच्चों को, उनके अंदर ग्रिट आ जाए.
That's also a security hazard. And
ठीक है, आप अपनी गाड़ी लगाएं रिक्शे के पीछे, गाड़ी आपकी है.
you actually feel कि रिक्शे में जाना would teach them grit?
You think that a silver spoon in their mouth is going to teach them grit?
No.
Okay, mama is coming and bringing my book and laptop as a 16-year-old, and in 2 years, if he commits a murder, if he has non-consensual relationships with a woman, he will be treated as an adult in any court of law in the world.
Yeah.
But at this point, as a 16-year-old, we expect कि उसका लैपटॉप उसकी अम्मा पहुंचाएंगी. सोचिए ना, हमारी डायकोटमीज देखें जो हम क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, फिर बच्चों को कहते हैं यार ये तो बच्चे ऐसे हैं. नहीं भाई, बच्चे कुछ नहीं है. जो बच्चा है वो माँ बाप है. मैं तो ये समझता हूँ, मैं तो अपने माँ बाप को भी यही कहता हूँ, यार आपको मुझसे शिकायत है, देखें मेरी जीन्स आपकी हैं, मेरी अपब्रिंगिंग आपकी है, मेरी अपॉर्चुनिटी, मेरा स्कूल आपका है, मुझसे आप कोई कंप्लेन नहीं कर सकते. मेरी औलाद मुझसे कंप्लेन करेगी, मैं आपसे कंप्लेन कर सकता हूँ. आई डिड नॉट चूज टू बी हेयर, यू चोज टू ब्रिंग मी हेयर. So everything that I am is a product of your genes, your upbringing. It's a very clarifying concept if you think about it this way. How do we, when parents blame their children, मैं तो उनसे ये पूछता हूँ यार ये किसने किया है? इसको पैदा करने का फैसला किसने किया? इसकी जीन्स किसकी है? इसकी अपब्रिंगिंग किसकी है? Of course, और किस तरह ग्रिड सिखाएंगे आप? आप मुझे बताएं, आप किस तरह ग्रिड सिखाना चाहती हैं बच्चों को?
I think sports teaches them grits. To be honest, like I feel the one thing we need to do more of if your child is privileged is like really like push them in sports, because I think on the sports playing field it doesn't matter कि आप कितने privileged से हो, आप कितने Greek yogurts खा रहे हो. What matters is how much you're willing to push yourself. So like my daughter Rania is a Punjab level swimmer.
Mashallah.
And I feel like she's the most spoiled because I have one daughter, 4 boys. So a natural tendency है to spoil her. And also I feel I wasn't spoiled as a child. ना तो वो भी reverse psychology भी बहुत चल रही होती है. But I know that when I wake
अच्छा ये
up.
वैसे अच्छा just let me interrupt. जहाँ reverse psychology चल रही है ना, क्योंकि
cognizant के ये गलत है. I agree.
नहीं, मैं यही कह रहा हूँ ना, in general तो ये great. अब ये आपका fear है कि यार कोई security situation है यहाँ पे, लेकिन यहाँ पे कसूर से आई हुई लड़कियाँ अली इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ एजुकेशन में रहती हैं. कसूर तो खैर बहुत ही एक शहर की, मैं कोट राधा किशन ऐसी जगह इनका आपने नाम भी नहीं सुने होंगे, बाबे वाला गांव, फलाना गांव, यहाँ के गांव से लड़कियाँ आती हैं, अली इंस्टीट्यूट रहती हैं, वहाँ हॉस्टल हैं, रोज़ रिक्शे पे बैठ के जाती हैं हाफ वे अक्रॉस द सिटी, रोज़ वापस आती हैं. उनके माँ बाप ने कोई सिक्योरिटी सिचुएशन का नहीं सोचा हुआ. क्यों नहीं सोचा हुआ? क्योंकि उनकी लाइफ की एक फ्रीडम जर्नी का ये हिस्सा है. दिस इज़ प्रिविलेज. आप कह रही हैं कि सिक्योरिटी, भाई आपके क्यों हट्टे कट्टे 150 पाउंड के बच्चे के लिए सिक्योरिटी सिचुएशन है, जब वो बेचारी जिसको कुछ नहीं पता, सिर्फ ये पता है या अल्लाह मेरा कहीं दाखिला हो गया, या अल्लाह कहीं से मेरे पास हॉस्टल की फ़ीस देने के पैसे आ गए, मैंने तो ये 4 साल करके निकलना है. मैं रोज़ सुबह कलमा चौक पे देखता हूँ बच्चियाँ इतनी प्यारी प्यारी लगी, कोई मेडिकल कॉलेज है अपने उसमें कॉलेज गाउन, मेडिकल कॉलेज गाउन में बसों से उतरती हैं. वो रोड क्रॉस करना इतना मुश्किल है. मैं भी उस पे जा रहा होता हूँ रोज़, हालांकि उनको देखता हूँ, आई ट्राई टू स्लो डाउन, बट कभी कभी मैं भी नहीं करता. उसके बीच में से नेविगेट करते, वो तो पहुँच रही हैं, हमारे बच्चे नहीं पहुँच सकते, उनके सर पे कुछ सुखाब का पर लगा हुआ है क्योंकि उनके माँ बाप जो हैं वो एयर कंडीशन गाड़ियों में फिरते हैं. भाई उनके माँ बाप की गाड़ियाँ हैं वो.
To me the approach should not be कि हम उनसे गाड़ियाँ लेकर रुक जाएं. To me the approach should be that expose them to challenges which require their intellectual sports. I feel in the swimming pool, whether Rania is trained in Dubai and the other girl is trained in Code Radhakrishnan, it doesn't matter. What matters is who is going to push themselves harder. Literally, it comes down to weight timings. Like Sindh girls generally beat Punjab girls, and I feel because they train harder. So it's very clear. And the second thing I would say is that expose them to just not like the Hunza trip that you guys are taking, which is actually living with the community. Jitne bhi aap comfort mein reh rahe ho, you're actually exposed to the economics of life and happiness in real world settings. So personally, I feel that if you do have privilege, then use it for, like, Seeds of Peace is a fantastic program where they force Pakistanis and Indians to live together. They take away your phones. Yes, you have to pay for that program. And the other option would be कि बस आप अपने बच्चों को इंडिया भेज दो, फिर दुआ करोगे वापस आ जाए. But I feel this is like a better version.
मैं एक बात बताऊं आपको, वैसे आपने चूंकि ये मिसाल दी, मैं 17.5 साल का था.
फिर तब आप इंडिया जा सकते थे, अब नहीं जा सकते.
नहीं, मैं वैसे बता रहा हूँ. मैं भी सारी प्रिविलेज थी. HSN में कॉलेज प्रीफेक्ट था, पाकिस्तान राइडिंग टीम में था. मेरे दिमाग में, मैंने अपने बाप से कहा मैंने तो इंडिया जाना है, क्योंकि मेरी रूट्स हमें कहानियाँ आप सुनाते रहते हैं कि हम इंडिया से आए हुए हैं महाजिर. तो मेरे अब्बा ने कहा ठीक है. मैं ट्रेन पे बैठ के गया.
तब अलाउड था ना, तब रास्ते खुले थे.
हाँ, कभी अभी भी कभी खुल जाते हैं, कभी बन करतारपुर से आप जा सकते हैं फॉर एग्जांपल. मतलब वहाँ से वीज़ा लगवा. बट आई एम सेइंग कि आई विद माय ऑन अ ट्रेन. और मेरा जो पहला एक्सपीरियंस है इंडिया का, मुझे याद है 17.5 साल का. मेरी सारी प्रिविलेजेस में HSN कॉलेज में, मैं तो हमारा घर भी HSN के साथ था, मेरा बाप भी HSonian था. लाइक आई हैड लिव्ड इन अ वेरी बिग बबल ऑल माई लाइफ. वेरी स्मॉल बबल एक्चुअली. HSN में वो गार्डन. मैं अभी आया हूँ 2019 में, तो मुझे मेन मार्केट का रास्ता पता चला है कि यार मेन मार्केट कौन सी है. नहीं, सुने ना. तो मैं वो अपना बैग
आपने बुढ़ापे में सीखी है.
नहीं, मुझे पता ही नहीं था ये चीज़ें. मैं अपना बैग पैक डाल के इंडिया गया हूँ. अटारी का ट्रेन स्टेशन पे मैं बैठा हूँ. मुझे याद है मैं इतना थक गया था कि मैं सोया हुआ हूँ. अभी इंडिया शुरू ही नहीं हुआ है. और मेरी सुबह किस तरह हुई कि मेरे अब्बा ने मुझे एक सैंडविच पैक करके दिया हुआ था. वो एक कुत्ता मेरे बैग पैक से खींच के निकाल रहा था. तो लाइक आई फेल्ट अ प्रेजेंस एंड आई वोक अप. सो अब वो एक्सपीरियंस, another experience, I was going from Delhi to Chandigarh in a bus, and I went to the bus stand in Delhi and I used the bathroom there, and it was the smell, like even talking to you right now, that smell in my mind is registered. उससे हुआ क्या कि वो दिन और आज का दिन मुझे कोई दुनिया का बाथरूम गंदा नहीं लगा. I am able to use the bathroom, and I have used it in the middle of Mongolia, in the Sahara Desert, in wherever, because it is no longer an issue in my life, because I survived that. Transport, because I survived that same journey, is no longer an issue, and I don't need an air-conditioned car and thus the opportunities that I have to travel, mashallah, बहुत हार्ड जगहों पे. आई वाज इन द अमेज़न फॉरेस्ट फॉर 5 days in December. से पहले मैं बर्म्यूडा भी जा चुका. आई हैव बीन टू प्लेसेस बिकॉज ऑफ दैट एक्सपीरियंस. आई फील लाइक कि मैं तो कहीं भी उठ के चला जाता हूँ दुनिया में अब, क्योंकि मैं 17 साल की उम्र में एक बैकपैक लगा के इंडिया 1 महीने के लिए चला गया था अलोन. हॉस्टाइल प्लेस, खौफनाक की चीज़ें सुनी थी, बट इट वाज अ वर्ल्ड क्लास एक्सपीरियंस. एंड सो ये वो आप कर लें प्रोटेक्ट, जितना प्रोटेक्ट करना है कर लें. हमें तो नहीं पता, बच्चा बाथरूम में फिसल के गिर के भी तो खुदा ना खासा चोट लग ही सकती है ना. बट आई सी द वर्ल्ड एंड आई वॉन्ट माई चिल्ड्रन टू सी द वर्ल्ड एज अ प्लेस ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी, एज अ प्लेस ऑफ कनेक्शन, एज अ पोटेंशियल टू डेवलप रिलेशनशिप. सो फियर विल नेवर बी द इमोशन दैट लीड्स माई अपब्रिंगिंग ऑफ माई चिल्ड्रन. येस, दे माइट गेट किक्ड बाय अ स्टैलियन and we will have to deal with the consequences, but does that mean that they will not be able to go clean a stall? और मेरे बच्चे, प्रिविलेज की बात, मेरे बच्चों को घोड़े पे बैठने से पहले उनके स्टॉल की सफाई करनी है, क्योंकि वो घोड़े मेरे हैं, उनके नहीं हैं. You understand? And this is the constant communication I have with my, all of this. They're not allowed to tell any of the staff कि मुझे ये चाहिए. उसी वक्त डांट पड़ती कि the staff is not yours, you go get your own water. जो आप पहले कही थी ना कि मेड्स भाग रही हैं, क्यों भाई, क्यों भाग रही हैं? अपने पाँव नहीं है क्या? You know what I mean? तो ये है थोड़ी सी सख्ती वाली. کیونکہ ضرورت ہے یار, آگے دنیا میں کسی نے ان کو مولی کاڈل نہیں کرنا. اینڈ وی نیڈ ٹو پریپیئر چلڈرن فار اے گلوبل ورلڈ. وی کانٹ, if you're preparing students for the children for the 163rd country in the world, this is where they'll be limited to.
Absolutely. Ali, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground, and I think you gave parents a lot of material to think about, ponder over, have discussions with their children. So thank you.
Thank
Is there
you.
any like lasting piece of advice you have for parents who are watching?
I didn't have children for a very long time because I didn't know if I could be a good father. I was with my wife in a relationship with her and married to her for, we had our first child in 2020 and we were together since 2007.
Really?
Yeah.
13 years?
Yeah. So we I stayed for a long time, and then I met who's still my mentor. He's 90 years old. His name is Gunnar. He raised 11 children. And he said to me that only have children when you are willing to dedicate 15 years of your life to them, because after 15 years they will belong to the world. But once they belong to the world, you will gauge yourself for the rest of your life on how good you were as a parent. Nothing else will matter, because this is your biological evolutionary impetus. And I think in today's day and age, what I've realized is that that number has reduced. So I very much feel like I have my children for the first 7 years of their lives. I am still able to influence them for the next 5, and then they belong to the world. So in this time, try as intentionally as you can to impart the most important values that you have built. Don't worry about other things. Don't worry too much about your kids' happiness. Don't engage their emotions too much. Invest time, not things, and give experiences, not toys.
Great, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching. Do share your comments, your questions, and we'll definitely reach out to Ali for answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Ali, you should definitely do roundtables. You definitely do roundtables.